Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Music Den. I'm your host, Armando Venditti. Hoping you guys are having a fantastic day. In this episode of the Music Den, I'm going to be doing another installment of Misguided or Misunderstood. I haven't done one of these in a while. This is where I take an album by a band and I discuss whether or not it was a misguided step by the band, or a mistake in essence, or was the album that they released misunderstood by their fan base and the public at large in terms of what the band was trying to do with this music that they wanted to present to their fans. And this one I've chosen, I just thought about doing this morning. The one I've chosen is probably going to cause a bit of a stir, but what the hell? The band is Van Halen, and the album is Van Halen 3. Now, Van Halen 3 signaled the third incarnation of the band. It was released March 17th, 1998 through Warner Brothers Records. Happened to be their last release for Warner Brothers. Their next release would be in 2012, so a hell of a gap in time through Interscope Records. And the album was A Different Kind of Truth with David Lee Roth on lead vocals. What happened to be their last album, studio album that they have released. Back to Van Halen 3. Van Halen 3 is a bit of a bone of contention with the fan base. It is, as I understand, their only album from Van Halen to be officially deleted from the Warner Brothers / Van Halen catalog. So if you want to get this album, you probably will have to get it on through thrift shops or Discogs or eBay, because it's not available anywhere else in terms of being in circulation. It was recorded from March to November of 1997. Again, featuring Gary Cherone on lead vocals. Gary Cherone at that point, ex of Extreme. Extreme had broken up at that point after the release and tour of Waiting for the Punchline. This, unfortunately, would be the only album that they would release through with Gary Cherone on lead vocals. There was an album planned after this. Demos were recorded, and I don't think they'll ever see the light of day. But it was rumored that Warner Brothers had basically said to Eddie Van Halen, "You have to get rid of Gary Cherone, otherwise we're not going to continue." Then they never did continue. But I also read that from Gary Cherone has said that even though the album was at times fun to make, that he did feel like a stranger in a strange land, quote, end quote. The album itself, 12 tracks, hard rocking, but also with a bit of a twist. The album was produced by Eddie Van Halen and Mike Post. Mike Post, as you may or may not know, was well known for composing theme music for shows such as The Rockford Files, Law and Order SVU, Law and Order, and The A-Team. He was well known for that. Mike Post also produced albums for Kenny Rogers and The First Edition. They were a country rock band with Kenny Rogers playing bass. They were signed to Reprise Records in the late 60s. Mike Post has also produced albums for Dolly Parton, one of which was 9 to 5. And the choice of Mike Post as a co-producer for the album was another question mark in the minds of the fan base, because he was really not known as a hard rock producer. Now, what else is there to say about Van Halen 3? Quite a lot. And it's a bit of a mixed bag, this album. Again, 12 tracks. Starts off with New World, which is an instrumental, only a minute and change, featuring Mike Post on piano and Eddie Van Halen on acoustic guitar. Beautiful little instrumental, I think. The melody line on the acoustic guitar is also the chorus for Without You, the following track, which was one of 3 singles released from the album. Without You, What I Want, and Fire in the Hole were the 3 singles, with Without You, the only one receiving heavy radio play. There was even a video filmed for it that was featured on Much Music in Canada and MTV in the US at the time when MTV and Much Music did play videos. We won't go into that. The album does have, in my very humble opinion, all of the Van Halen trademarks. The heavy drums from Alex Van Halen played beautifully. The heavy, shredding guitar work, soloing that Eddie Van Halen is famous for. For me, Gary Cherone has always been a fantastic vocalist. He could harmonize with the best of them. He's also great at doing double tracking harmonies with himself. The album, as I said, songs like Without You, When I Want, From Afar, they all have the Van Halen trademarks. Heavy guitar, heavy drums, fantastic vocals. I would imagine the one bone of contention on the album is the track Once, track number 6. Clocks in at just under 8 minutes, something like 7 minutes, 59 seconds. Heavy piano presence, heavy programmed drum presence. Fantastic guitar soloing on this, and fantastic vocals. The arrangement of the track, it's a very sprawling track, and it goes into sections. Did it belong on a Van Halen album? If you're open to Van Halen, this is where the divisiveness comes in. Sorry, guys. If you're open to Van Halen and groups of the like, sprawling out, spreading out into different territories, trying something new musically, trying out a different arrangement, rather than just meat and potatoes of drums, bass, guitar, yes, it belongs on the album. If you are of the belief that Van Halen should just be drums, bass, heavy guitar, and vocals, and just straightforward rock and roll, then no. I personally love this track. I think it's one of the best tracks on the album. I know that's going to get me in trouble. So be it. Other tracks of note on the album are Josephina, which they did live on this tour. A Year to the Day, another sprawling 8-minute track where Gary Cherone is basically yearning and pleading with his vocal delivery to the point where it almost sounds like his throat is bleeding with his delivery. Gary Cherone, as you know, has a raspy vocal delivery, but he's just yearning. It's just his vocals go over the top, and the guitar on this and the various sections and the extended guitar solo in the middle of the track is fantastic. Okay. Primary is another instrumental, clocking in a minute 23 seconds. Could they have done without it? Yeah, I think they could have. I think that maybe if this album had been reined into just maybe under 60 minutes or maybe 60 minutes, it would have been enough. How Many Say I is the last track on the album, which another 6-minute plus track, which features Eddie Van Halen on lead vocals, which I think is the only time that you hear Eddie Van Halen on vocals, and Gary Cherone is on backing vocals. Did this belong on the album? No. But aside from that, I think that this album is a good album. It's a really good album. I think what hurt the album was the circumstances surrounding the release. I mean, you had Sammy Hagar in the news, uh, and the band themselves hashing it out, throwing mud back and forth. I think the controversy surrounding the release of this album, with all the other stuff that was going on, having David Lee Roth back in the band, and then kicking him out again, and then having the fight with publicly with Sammy Hagar, I don't think it helped the band and helped the chances of the album. The album reached number 4 on the Billboard charts. The album to date has sold 800,000 copies, okay, since 1998. So that's not a good track record for this album. I do believe that the controversy that surrounds any album that's released by any artist, if there is the slightest bit of controversy, I think it does create a very detrimental atmosphere for the album. The Is this a good album? Yes. Should have been released? Yes, maybe with some editing here and there. And also without the controversy. There was also another album that was going to be, I believe, I don't know if I mentioned this, but there was another album that was going to be planned for to be recorded. There are some demos recorded with Gary Sharon on vocals. And Gary Sharon has said in retrospect, there are some songs that are good on this album. There are some songs that could have been worked on more and maybe done better. There are some songs on this album that he doesn't like. You know, retrospect is always 2020, looking back on things. But the follow-up album was scrapped because Warner Brothers apparently had said to Eddie Van Halen, you either get rid of Gary Sharon or we won't continue. Well, they ended up signing with another record company afterwards anyway. So I think that this is a good album. Is it a perfect album? No. Was this album a misguided attempt? Or was it misunderstood? I believe largely it was misunderstood by the fan base. I do believe that with all the controversy, it's a bit of a mixed bag with this episode. I do believe that, yes, the album was misunderstood by the audience. I do believe that it was a misguided step by the band with all the controversy that was going on around the release of the album. I mean, Van Halen were never once to shy away from slinging mud in the press, but I do believe that this hurt the album's chances. Okay. Gary Sharon has said that making the album first and then touring was a mistake. He wanted a tour forced. Sorry. It's been a long day already for me, guys. He wanted a tour first and then release an album because he felt that if you toured and people would get used to him as a new lead singer, it would have given him a better chance in being in Van Halen. As it was, he kind of felt like, again, a stranger in a strange land, a little disjointed within the band. And again, it's got to be said that this album was viewed as a Edward Van Halen solo album by Michael Anthony, who only appears, again, as I said, on the 3 tracks. And he basically left the band shortly after this tour and subsequently ended up selling his rights to his catalog to any future Van Halen album sales, which to me, if you have a hand in creating the music that you put out, you should never sell your catalog. At this point, the back catalog was still selling a good amount of money. So I don't know why anybody, and he's not the first one. Christine McVie from Fleetwood Mac sold her shares to the Fleetwood Mac catalog. Other artists have sold their catalog to for a lot of money, but to me, that is your bread and butter. And if you are making money off your catalog, why would you sell it? So, in closing, do I think that this album was misguided or misunderstood? I think it was misguided in the circumstances that it was released under, and misunderstood by the staunch fan base as to what the band was trying to do with the music. I mean, a band should be allowed to stretch out and do different things. You may not like it, you may like it, but in the end, you are the one that is responsible for your happiness with regards to what you create. And if you're not allowed as an artist to stretch out and do something different, then what the hell's the point? So I think in this episode, it's a bit of a mixed bag. It's a 50-50. Yes, it was a misguided attempt under the circumstances that it was released, and it was misunderstood by the audience and the fan base at large and the journalists in terms of what they were trying to do with the music. So that's it for this episode. Please put your comments down below. Do you like this album, Van Halen 3? Do you not like it? Do you think that, are you a David Lee Roth fan? Are you a Sammy Hagar fan? You tell me, do you even like this album at all? Do you think that Gary Sharon was given a bad break, or he should have been given another shot, or should they have gotten rid of him even after the demos for Van Halen 3 were done? Leave your comments again down below and let me know what you think, and click like and subscribe and hit the notification bell to keep yourselves on top of any new content that I've got coming up. As I said in my previous video from yesterday, I will be doing an album discussion on Kiss Harder Than Hell with Mr. Peter Kent from the Lizard King channel. Please check out that channel. And I'm going to be doing a couple of album rankings with Bill Schuster, Steely Dan, and the long-awaited Pink Floyd album ranking. Okay, so for now, please look after yourselves and one another, and I will be seeing you soon with another video. Bye for now.